Ladies and gentlemen of the jury of public opinion, I am Dale Matthews, if it please the court, and
Um, am I part of the court too?
yes, you are.
Because I'm not pleased.
Well,
I could be doing other things right now, for crying out loud. Man, I have to be in here and dissect this piece of video and tell you what's wrong with it, which I will do.
This is an unusual couple of evenings, tonight and tomorrow night. You don't get a chance to see a hearing in a courtroom a piece at a time. I mean, a number of us watched the O.J. Simpson trial when I was just a child. But it's not very often that you actually get to see the whole thing, and we will play that back for you. It's less than an hour, but it's going to take us a couple of nights to talk about it. Now, on the 18th, Mike and I showed up at courtroom number 1 in the courthouse in front of Judge Pat Wolke. And one of the questions that Judge Wolke had, which really surprised me, is what is the meaning of the word permanent? Well, he kept engaging in dialogue with the fellow sitting next to me, who was a lawyer, and these two sitting across from us, which are lawyers, and people behind us, which are lawyers. And I was surrounded by lawyers. I decided to pick up the ball and do this one, aided by a lot of people, including Sandy Casanelli and also my partner here, Mike Jones. And it centered around, for the judge, this definition of the word permanent. Mike, what is your definition of the word permanent?
Well, actually, since I'm not in a courtroom arguing a case right now, I would give probably about the same definition of permanent that the judge did, which means, something that is has no end to it.
But when I talked to Wally Hicks, he said, in the law, there's something a little different about the word permanent. It's not the typical definition.
Naturally.
And we all know what, especially if you're from California or know anyone from California, you know what a permanent tax is.
Yes.
It's anything that starts out small and gets bigger and bigger and bigger and will never, ever go away, Mike.
Yes. And the silly thing about the judge's argument is that permanent, in the definition that he was giving, has no relationship to human beings at all. In our lives, the span of our consciousness, we will never experience permanent. So we don't know what permanent, as he was describing it, is. So it's dumbed down a little bit for people in their existence, how to refer to something as permanent. I would consider that the payment that I make on my mortgage is a permanent fixture. In other words, I keep paying that. That's the amount that I pay every single month. It's not going to change until I pay it off. But until then, it's permanent. This is how we all think of things like this.
Well, this thing with the city sales tax, that it was sold to the city councilors by the staff as a permanent tax. We all know what this means. I mean, we do use English on an everyday basis. And so what is safety? Are any of us really safe? I mean, if you're really going to get into a high school debating class, yeah, maybe this makes sense, but not in a court of law. What is the definition of judge? Okay, a judge is supposed to be someone that determines the law, but judge can also mean, there's another definition where you form an opinion. Well, this judge had already formed an opinion before he walked in the door.
Yeah, some might say that he prejudiced the case.
Prejudged the case. Right. Prejudice, right. And so I thought that I would be sitting next to somebody that was the legal counsel hired lawyer for the Chamber of Commerce. And I thought I'd be sitting across from one or two, and they also hired somebody in Medford to give them advice, really, and we paid for that. That's nice. But I didn't think that I'd be sitting in front of someone who was acting as a lawyer for the city. He was. The judge was. Well, you'll see for yourself, and we'll do what we always do. And I said, Mike, let's take it apart, including what I said, and we'll dissect this as we
That'll be the
do.
easiest part.
Yeah, and laugh about everything that's in here. And so we'll play it back and we'll stop it often, but we'll also put up all this hearing probably in two parts, because the whole thing lasts for about 45 minutes. We'll probably put it up in two parts where you can watch it and then you can yell at it all by yourself.
And there'll be a cash prize for the one who can pick out the moment. And some would call it the glove moment, where, you know, if it does not fit, you must acquit. If you can point that out, there'll be a cash prize.
But that prize is not permanent, and it'll be over.
Yes. Yes. It'll be paid in equal installments once every millennia.
Let's go ahead and play the tape. Let's watch to see what people have to say.
All right.
All rise, please.
Thank you. Please be seated. This is case number 15, CV 21399, Jim Williams, Coley Martin versus Mark Bartholomew et al. Case number 15, CV 21076, Dale Matthews versus Karen Frick et al. And both Mr. Matthews is here and Mr. Grant is here for petitioners. And are you Ms. Button?
Yes, I'm Ms. Button.
I'm Mark Bartholomew. Mr. Bartholomew is here for the city. During the weekend, I had a chance to review all the pleadings. I've read the cases that are involved, and I'm happy to hear argument. I'll just note, Mr. Walters, we have 2 media requests and only 2 media requests, so unless you have a media request, you can't take it. Oh, okay.
And we did. Thank you.
Read the cases, and I guess the way I'd like to proceed an argument is I'm going to start with Mr. Graham, move on to Mr. Matthews, and then allow the city to respond, and then allow each to respond in turn, if you like. I'm required to, if you may. And as I mentioned, I've read all.
I was trying to find a position where this guy's head wasn't sitting right on that jug.
I think he's trying to hide behind it. He's kind of
Yes.
a head, yeah.
So I'll start with Mr. Graham.
All right, stand back.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Graham gets up.
Your Honor,
Yes.
I think what's really clear from the pleadings and everything is this. The city wants to adopt a 2% sales tax. It's on a permanent basis. I'll start with the caption. There's nothing in the caption that indicates that sales tax is permanent. That to me is why the caption itself is misleading. If someone looks at this and they go, well, they're replacing a property tax that sunsets and a GL levy that sunsets. But this is a permanent tax. And it's been, the citizens have been indoctrinated into this and learned that the city and the county are always coming back to them for an additional vote on a levy to establish sufficient funds for criminal justice and public safety. But the idea of a permanent sales tax is so foreign and contrary to the public of this state. There's a lot of people who moved here.
Well, you say it's permanent, but I mean, is any tax really permanent? It can always be amended.
Well, there's not a sunset on the tax. There's not a date.
Yeah.
So what am I thinking when I look over at you?
Yes.
Let's go home.
Yeah, that's right. Is anything really permanent?
In this life, really, and is any of us really safe? And what is life, after all? Really, this is a courtroom. Well, it was over. That was it. Okay. Good night, everybody.
Yes. Well, and listen, if anybody is going to be involved in a some sort of a court situation, legal situation here in Grants Pass, I would hope not to get this guy. I don't know if anybody else, any of the other judges are better than that, but this guy clearly picked a side and went and sat down on it and parked himself there.
Now,
Because this argument about, is anything really permanent? That is just cockeyed.
it is that. And now you won't hear in part one, which is tonight, anything from Mark Bartholomew. You hear a lot about from him tomorrow night, but he doesn't need to say a word. I mean, they had these two people there. She didn't say anything except, hello, I'm Miss Button. And she seemed nice, but this guy really didn't have to say anything because the judge was arguing his whole case and things that Mark Bartholomew didn't even think of. He was arguing it for him.
Yeah.
And what wasn't argued by him was made up by Mr. Graham sitting next to me. Shut up! You'll see. You'll see. Oh.
That tax is going to end. Would the court agree with me about that? Nowhere does it say that tax is going to end.
Well,
Okay. I can't get past the body language of he's saying very forcefully, the court would have to agree with me about that as he's backing up. I mean,
Right.
what is that?
Stop asking the judge if he agrees with you. Why did he keep asking him? Because he didn't agree with anything that either one of us had to say. Nothing. Zero. Zip.
But the idea of backing up while you're giving a forceful argument is counter.
Yes.
I mean, it throws your whole brain off. It's like,
Well,
wait a minute. Are you being aggressive or are you running away? Is this fight or flight? What is this?
Right. I stood stock still during mine. I just stood there, tall, dark, handsome, whatever, well, one of those things. But anyway, I stood there and I wasn't going to give any ground to this guy. Really, every appearance at the weekly business session, every appearance in court, I've been there as a witness, not as a defendant, thank you very much, is a combination of chess and boxing. Yeah. And you better know when to make your move, and it better be the right one, and you better have something in reserve. This guy, he didn't. Okay, go ahead, Mike.
I looked up the definition of permanent in the dictionary, and it says basically unending. Unending. I don't think any tax is unending unless the people want it to be.
But
no, wait a minute.
To set this tax aside.
Wait a minute. No tax is unending unless the people want it to be.
Well, wait.
What?
Well, wait a minute. What? But wait. Unless we want to be responsible for taxing the people, our posterity, 5 generations in the future, is that what you're talking about, Judge?
And the judge is telling us that if the people don't want it to be unending, that we have a choice. Tell the people of California this. Why did half of us move here? This is ridiculous.
Silly.
It's just wrong. It's just wrong. Okay, it's 2 wrongs. And that doesn't make a right. Go ahead, Michael.
Yes.
Voters would have to come in and in essence eliminate it. Or the city council would eliminate it. Right. But the clear reading of it, this is a permanent tax. Okay? So the second point is that again, this is a initiative to put a sales tax into the city's business system. The question just starts out, the city shall eliminate a 179 property tax levy and eliminate a jail utility fee. Oh, and implement a 2% sales tax. The question should read, shall the city implement a 2% permanent sales tax?
I object.
This is the wrong tactic. It's the wrong tactic because case law clearly shows that if it's deceptive, that's different than the way that you'd like it to read. Nobody, the judge included, should be involved in telling you how to write this thing unless he sees something that's deceptive or just wrong. And so say, oh, well, I think it should be in another order. I think it should be in another order too. But that's not up to a judge. I don't want the judge involved in doing that kind of stuff. Well, you need to change the order because I think, no, that's not in the case law. This guy's a lawyer. He's paid to do this. He's paid to do this. No, he's not backed up by the law. Go ahead.
And
Mr. Graham, if you say that, aren't you implying to the voters they have no power to do anything with the 2% sales tax? And isn't that incorrect and false?
no, what's
They
false,
certainly do. They have a right to come back and petition, have a vote on whether or not it should be eliminated or the rate should go up or down, correct?
the citizens are being asked to adopt a 2% sales tax. Correct?
Well, just answer my question.
Well, I don't follow your question.
No.
They
What?
have a right- Citizens have a right.
I'm stalling for time.
They have a right to repeal a tax as with any legislation.
Correct.
Okay. So it's not permanent.
Well,
Answer.
it's permanent until the voters then take an action to set it aside. Isn't that right?
Well, that's true of any legislation.
It is?
Okay.
Any legislation can be undone by the voters. Just a tax can't, anything else can't. It's not permanent.
But the issue before the taxpayers, who are the citizens of this city who are going to vote, is that they are adopting a 2% sales tax. Whether you call it permanent or not, if you're adopting a 2% sales tax.
I'm looking at him because you're not going to win this.
The way
Yeah, just being combative with the judge is probably always a bad idea. You know what, though? I mean, there is something to this, okay, he objects to the word permanent, but then give me some other phrase that tells you that this will be enacted and it will be there until some action of people to undo it at a later date. And permanent, of course, is the shortest way of doing that, being that they're, spaces at a premium.
Right,
So-
and I think that they magnified this thing and put it out to the point at which there wouldn't be any room left over. That's my personal opinion. But the problem with Graham and what he's arguing here is, one, he doesn't have firm law underneath it. I mean, yes, everyday intuition by regular citizens say, why don't you tell us if this dang thing is permanent? I wasn't going to mention it at all, but I could see which way. I mean, I wasn't going to leave, but I could see, okay, this is over. As soon as the judge weighed in with his definition that he looked up in the dictionary. Okay, I looked up judge, as I told you. So this is a done deal. And Graham keeps arguing this point. Now, they had like 7 points on their side. We had one, that you shouldn't be putting the three things together in one question, because you're saying no to two things and yes to another. And what if you don't want to do that? What if you're one of those guys that wants every tax in the world? Okay, and so then how are you going to vote on it? Or somebody doesn't want any taxes. Now, how are you supposed to vote on it? That's the law. There's case law that supports that. There's no case law that supports that you get to choose the word that goes in there. I get his point, but he's in a court of law.
Well, I would say, for future situations, I think that, there ought to be a determination by the court about what permanent means as it relates to taxation.
This is a really good point, Mike, because the first thing that I ended up saying was I could see which way it was going to go. This is all over. Okay. So first thing I did get up and declare victory. And Mark Bartholomew looks at me like, what?
Yes, like, what are you talking about?
And I said, because, and this is what I told the city council yesterday, every single time from now on that you say the word permanent, we need a permanent. This is going to permanently, you can never do that ever again, thanks to Mark Bartholomew, because you took a perfectly good word that everybody knows what it means and uses it, and you got a judge just to win this case, Mark. You got a judge to now declare that word is null and void. Okay, let's use that the next time that they are putting up a levy.
So how are they going to get by that?
They
How are
won't
they-
be able to.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that they're going to have to come up with some other way of describing it.
How are they going to do that?
Or they're going to have to just ignore you and do it
Yes.
anyway.
That's what they're going to do.
Because, yeah, that's probably what they'll do. But, at that given point in time, we'll be able to take video of them blowing right past it and put video of this judge saying nothing's really permanent and in direct relation to the sales tax, and them saying their thing one right after the other, and they're going to look like idiots.
This is what we do with the county commissioners. We put Cheryl saying, well, I don't agree. And then we put, well, I think it's insistent. And then the two don't match. And then you just tell her about it. And she's like, hey, you must be stopped. Keith, you got to sit down. Well, then don't be lunkheads. It's an impossible task. Go ahead, Mike.
The question is worded, it appears that the action of the city council in adopting this is, we're going to get rid of this levy. Oh, no, by the way, there's a sales tax we're going to implement, whether you call it permanent or not. The point is, the caption is misleading because they only refer to the sales tax at the end, and they make a big deal about eliminating the levy and utility tax that, oh, by the way, that's going to sunset in 2016 and 2008. That's very misleading. The voters, if you look at the question, think, oh man, we're getting rid of some taxes. But in reality, they're adopting a sales tax that instead of just being focused on property values, is now going to be assessed against anybody who buys anything or in a store or who buys a meal.
And this is a pretty good argument that he's making right here, but it lacks it's almost like if you're watching him, he's hunting for, something that's going to grab traction for him or something, instead of making the forceful argument and being, confident and sure of himself and having this all, dialed in.
Well, it's also blunted by the fact. This is what we do, folks. We take things apart. We'll do that with me too, although there's nothing to take apart from mine. It's blunted by the fact that he says, and then the one will expire in 2 years and the other in 3. Don't say it that way. What you need to say, in my opinion, is the day after the utility fee. Is it fee or a tax? Well, nobody knows what that means in the state of Oregon, according to Wally Hicks, fee or tax. The day that the utility fee expires, the next day, if this passes, this goes in. Really?
Right.
And so don't be telling us, well, in 2 years and 3. That sounds like a long time, but you need to put them in relationship with each other. It blunts his argument by saying 2 or 3 years out, for high school kids, that's forever. For
and
the blink of an eye.
And not only that, the way it's written, it gives you the idea that you're voting to make that go away.
Yes, that's
when in reality, it just goes away anyway. Even before, literally, it's like one's going in the door and one's coming out.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, that's part of the argument that I made, because our argument was about the 3 things back to back. We focused like a laser beam on that. Okay, the problem is that the judge, just when I was getting up to speed about that, saying it's like trying to vote to control the weather, that's when he interrupted me. So I came back and said it again. Well, you'll see. I'll get my chance. But it's still,
you're jumping ahead of yourself.
It's still Mr. Graham now here trying to grab some traction in a place where it's not going to do him any good anyway.
That's misleading. That's the crux of this, as well as the fact that the body of it, of the summary, makes no reference to the fact that this is that the 2 taxes that they are seeking to eliminate actually going to sunset. What's misleading is that the voter doesn't know that in 2 years, 3 years, you're
Oh,
gonna
that's
get rid of those
powerful.
taxes anyway. So why should I vote it?
It's labeled as a levy. Levies are for a period of time, but the voters know that.
Well, you're assuming that voters
Oh.
have the same degree of knowledge that perhaps you and I do.
This is the bad
Yeah,
argument.
we have a bias.
This is the worst.
We have a bias that we think voters think the same way we do, but they don't.
They're stupid.
In fact, I think it's incumbent upon the city or whoever's writing the
And
question
Mr. Bartholomew is
to
writing
dumb
down
it
how
down
the
to
guy,
lowest
how
common
he's going to argue
denominator
this.
for citizens to vote.
Which
They're
he
not
did.
on the same level that the lawyers and people who draft these things are on. You're assuming something when you say, well, don't they know it's going to sunset? It's a levy. They don't.
Did you see the judge right there?
I
He's making
did.
that thing with his mouth, and he's like, "You just blew it, buddy. You just
Oh, he
you just,
really did.
you just toasted yourself."
You saw me rub my eye, but what I really wanted to do was bury my hands over my face. I couldn't believe this guy was trying to suck up to the judge. Sorry, Graham,
Yeah.
but this is the worst possible thing. This is the worst thing that he said during the whole time. Not getting his words right or not saying, okay, everybody makes a mistake, but this guy's a professional. He's paid to do such things. And what he's doing is he's trying to buddy up to the judge by saying, well, we all know better.
Yeah, you and
Don't
you
do
and me,
that.
we're smart, and those other people out there are just a bunch of morons.
Oh, this is a really bad tactic. Doesn't
and
this
it
guy have
doesn't-
to live in this town?
Yeah, and it doesn't even matter if Mr. Bartholomew and the judge both actually think that. They know when somebody has jumped off the cliff and to not hand him a parachute.
Well,
You know,
what's so interesting about this is Mark Bartholomew, in his written brief to the judge, he says, well, we can't put the word permanent in there, really, because that would confuse the public.
Yeah.
Well, that's really insulting. Now, it doesn't matter that he said that anymore because Graham has
Yes.
just said it for him.
That's right.
Man.
He instead of understanding what that chip was to him, he one-upped Mr. Bartholomew, and that it negates the whatever value that chip had. It's really
So
sad.
Wolke and Bartholomew, they get to be the heroes of all citizens.
Yes,
by
that's
pointing
right.
out that we're actually smart. And you'll see the judge even picks up on this. Well, don't you think that people know what? Oh man.
Yeah. Well, you saw as soon as this guy starts making that argument, Mark Bartholomew is over there whipping out his tablet with his pen. And he's writing down. He's making a note.
He had a smile on his face, which is hard to see.
Yes.
Well, he didn't during any other thing, but that made him smile. Oh man. Who hired this guy? Go ahead.
All they know is assessed against their property taxes. That's what they do now. So the point is that it's misleading from that standpoint.
Do I have anything else here?
Oh, brother.
Somebody get me out of here. Throw me a ladder. I'm in too deep.
Your Honor, those are the big points that I wanted to make. I want to go back.
Oh, nice
to
for
the fact
ending on
that
a high note.
If you read this, particularly the question, it just
Wait a minute.
sounds like they're eliminating
I'm all
a
done.
levy. They're eliminating a utility fee. And that the adoption of a 2% sales tax is an afterthought. When in fact, what we're really talking about here is the city's going to adopt a sales tax. That's the question. Shall the city adopt and implement a 2% sales tax? That's what the question should be.
That's what the caption says.
But the question does not say that, does it? It does not say.
Stop asking him questions.
I'm losing, so I'm going to get more combative with you.
It starts out by saying it doesn't mention anything about a levy or a fee. It just mentions the fact that they're attempting to enact a sales tax.
But you have to, just because one part of it,
The caption is the first thing I would think they would read.
but you have to look at the question. The question is what's being submitted. That's a headline. The caption's a headline. The question that the voters are being asked upon is the critical thing. So I submit.
Thank you. Mr. Matthews.
Great. Now I have to follow that.
Your Honor, the best thing that's going to come out of this courtroom today, I believe, is that when the next levy comes up and they're saying this will give us a permanent solution to our law enforcement problem, it's been said in this courtroom that that's not permanent. Okay, I'll take that as a victory. One of the things.
What the heck does that mean? You'll take that as a victory.
Well, I could have said that better. What I meant is they're going to come out with another property tax levy. The whole system is, of course they are.
Yes, of course.
And when they try to claim that this is a permanent solution to anything, I'm going to permanently remind them that they can't use that word anymore. Yes. Okay, so I could have done a better job of explaining that. I don't think it mattered to the judge what I was saying, and I felt like declaring victory at that point. But yes, I could have done a better job at that. Thank you.
That is a problem with this, is that let's suppose that there was an older gentleman, well-to-do in the area, and he always votes for every kind of tax that would keep him safer. He wants to vote to keep the tax for the jail. He wants to vote to keep the tax on his property. He wants to vote to add a sales tax. He can't do that because he needs to make a choice.
Now, just so you know.
Oh, yeah, please tell people.
There's a guy sitting behind me that is in one of these. Now, this is in the jury box. And the jury box has these chairs that recline. They go, I don't know why somebody doesn't oil those, because during a trial, that would just be maddening.
Well, I know why he did it. Because he's from the Courier, and they don't know any better.
Yes,
this guy from the Courier just couldn't shut up. Move to the chair. Your chair didn't do that. And if you can hear it, it's going.
No, actually, my chair did do that. But I was making darn sure that I wasn't moving back and forth to make sure that wouldn't happen during this.
Well, this guy was taking still pictures, and why would he care? If
he doesn't care if he's making noise.
He's from the Courier, okay? Enough? Right. Thanks a lot, buddy. So what I'm doing here, and Graham, take note, I'm arguing the law. The law does back me up with case law about not putting something, and Mark Bartholomew tomorrow is going to say, well, if you put together this and this and this and they're totally separate, that's true. But there's also cases where what you're not supposed to do is put things together that don't supply someone with a legitimate choice. And the judge later explains, well, I'm here to be sure that this is fair. It's not fair. If you want to, I don't know why you do, but if you want to vote for every tax, you don't get the chance here. In order to get that sales tax, which you desperately want, somebody out there wants it, this guy wants it, okay. In order to get there, you have to say no to two other things. Now, why the heck would you say no to those? Or if you don't want any kind, well, I'll say that in a minute. Go ahead.
Do I want to eliminate two things that I want? Or do I want to say yes to another? He can't possibly vote on this. He won't know what to do. It's confusing. That's confusing. The word permanent is not confusing to our voters. That's been argued by the other side. That's not confusing. We know what that means. Let's suppose instead.
You, Mr. Matthews.
Okay.
What does permanent mean to you?
Permanent means the same thing that was meant by the levy.
Now, I am not going to fall for this trap. I've already seen what the judge has to say. So the judge is now, what does permanent mean to you? You know, what he's waiting. What is he waiting for me to say, Mike?
Well, and here's before you go to that, this reminds me of if you've ever watched The Apprentice, okay, Celebrity Apprentice. There are people sitting there in the boardroom. Somebody's going to get fired. And if you don't scramble by whatever means you have to get out of the way, it's going to be you. You're going to be the one who's fired. But what you need to do is make sure the other guy gets fired. And so that's the position Dale is in right now. He's put, well, what does permanent mean to you? And Dale knows darn well that the judge's definition of permanent is never ending.
So he's waiting for me to say, well, Judge, when I think of the word permanent, I think it lasts forever. Don't say that.
Yes.
So how do I answer?
Well, what? we'll just play the thing and see how that is. But essentially, it's a way of introducing, some common sense of what the voters actually think permanent is.
Well, he obviously thinks he's seen Graham, who's a professional, blow this thing and get into an argument with the judge who's made it clear that he's already made up his mind. He's prejudged this case, prejudice. Okay, so he thinks, well, this guy is not a lawyer, so I'll just get him. Look, I've been in enough debates arguing either side. I'm okay with that, although I have my own feelings about things. I can argue the other side. You have to know the arguments for the other side, or you're not going to be no good at all this. And so I am not going to agree with the judge that permanent means something that lasts forever, because
it's just silly. That's just silly. It's like saying, well, I have a chunk of limestone here that weighs 40 tons. It's not permanent. Really? It's going to be here long after I'm dead, unless somebody blows it up with some dynamite or something. I mean, it's the judge's argument is dumb, but it's the judge's, and I this is an argument I couldn't have made in court,
No,
because we're
dumb. No, I don't think so.
Well, the problem is that you're dependent on a judge to make a decision, and your case would have to be so overwhelming and glaringly correct in this situation where he has already prejudged it. That's the only way that you would win, is that if he realized, I'm going to look really, really stupid unless I go along with this guy. And apparently, he didn't feel that. I guess he thought he was pretty smart with this permanent definition.
Well, you know what? I thought what was going to happen is Mark Bartholomew, who also has an assistant that we paid for, and he's got a law firm that's helping him out of Medford that we paid for. I figured he'd come up with a bunch of case law, so we needed to come up with things that match case law. And I'm mentioning things that are rock solid examples in case law and in law in general, when people are confused or if they don't really have a choice. This is something that the court gets involved in. Otherwise, if it's all in a book, then you don't need a court. You don't need a judge. There's nothing to judge. It's obvious. But you compare the two. I thought that was going to happen. That didn't happen.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Here's my answer.
The levies on people's property, that if you vote that in, and if it says that it's permanent, then you've got a permanent solution to your law enforcement problem. Yes, and it can always be voted down.
I'm asking, what does the word permanent mean to you?
The word permanent means to me that it's going to stay that way unless voted down by the people later. Well, then they've got to go through a whole new process. Every law that we have that goes to the population could be voted down at any time. Then, and by one definition, absolutely nothing is permanent. By the other definition, argued when they want to pass a tax, it's always permanent. They want it both ways. So let's suppose instead that you had a younger person that was struggling and they just feel, for their own reasons, that they can't afford any kind of taxes. So they'd like to say no to the property tax. They'd like to say no to the jail levy tax. They'd like to say no to this. They can't do that either, because this says yes to two things and no to another. They won't know how to vote. It's not fair that they're all put within one thing. They should be two separate things. That way, then you can vote the way that you want to. I can vote the way that I want to. At the moment, we can't do that.
Okay.
Hi.
So I'm basing this argument on solid law. And I'm also trying to say, this is the way I want to vote. This is the way you want to vote, to personally involve the judge. And not having any choice at all is part of the law. So the judge looking at this, hadn't prejudged this case, should come in and say, you got a point there, Mr. Matthews, that people don't really have a choice. At that point, he should turn to Bartholomew, or he should question Bartholomew later. And, well, it should be later, not now. And say, hey, listen, this doesn't really offer an opportunity to people to make up their mind. You're prejudging this for them. This is what the law says. This is what it should say. Judge is not going for this at all. I had to do whatever I could.
Well,
go ahead.
Okay.
That's why this is not a good idea. Plus, the one in the middle, let's eliminate the jail utility fee, jail fee. That was put on there by the city council. They didn't ask us. They didn't put that out to a vote. They could cancel that tomorrow. They could cancel that any time. But they're telling us, well, now if you vote, it's going to go away. It's going to go away anyway. It's going to go away before this was implemented if it passes. So it's like saying, do you want to change the weather?
Mr. Matthews, couldn't both the levy be reauthorized by the people? Let's start with the levy. It could be reauthorized by the people.
It could be.
So it doesn't necessarily go away forever.
That's what this says. This is going to go away. Well, it doesn't necessarily go away.
Well, I mean, absent the sales tax, just talking about in general, you're concerned about what people think. The levy can be reauthorized to the people. You agree with that?
Yes, of course.
And you agree the fee can be reauthorized by the city council?
Anytime they want. Yes, sir.
So
even after this passes.
It won't necessarily go away.
You know, he's still making the permanence argument. He's still going, well, nothing is ever really permanent, whether it goes away or comes or whatever. You know, what an amazing thing. You know, that he's willing to go all the way to the hill for his definition.
I felt that I had to agree with him on a couple of things, or else I was going to seem too combative. I can't say you're full of it every point you're making, Judge. Okay, even though I have my personal opinion, and you guys probably do too. Look, I had to say yes, this is true. But the idea that if the city puts this on without even asking you, you probably didn't see, but sitting in the back were a couple of city councilors, and I looked at it carefully. They didn't look very happy when I said they put this on there without even asking you. They can put it back on there right after the vote. If you vote, this is an important thing. If you vote to say, I don't want that. Yeah, thank you for telling me that. They can put it on immediately afterwards. And you're going to hear that tomorrow. You're going to hear Mark Bartholomew say, I've got the quote right here. He says, let's see, if we were to say the sales tax is permanent, it wouldn't be right because it can be revoked. It can be revoked. It can be put on there. It can be taken off by the city council anytime. They don't need to ask you. So what are you really voting on? I was trying to say to the judge, it's like voting on the weather. It doesn't make any difference, except he interrupted me. Okay, go ahead.
That's a really good point. Thank you, Your Honor. When they say you're voting to get rid of this, they can impose the jail tax the very next day after it passes. They didn't ask us our opinion in the first place. So,
okay, I just had to take that opportunity. I was being sort of careful with what I'm saying. And then the judge says this thing about, well, it can be put right back on there. That's the point at which I tried to show him you're dealing with somebody here that's not entirely defenseless. Thanks for agreeing with me, Judge. He didn't have anything to say for a little bit after that, because that's a real skewer. This is a combination of chess and boxing, and I just handed him one of these. Now, it's not going to do me any good in the long run, but he just made my case for me. Thank you very much, Judge. Thank you.
And hang on a second here, because I'll have to revisit that. What was it that happened right there? You want me to roll this back a hair?
Yeah, why don't you do that?
Yeah.
Mr. Matthews, couldn't both the levy be reauthorized by the people? Let's start with the levy. It could be reauthorized by the people.
It could be.
So it doesn't necessarily go away forever.
That's what this says. This is going to go away. It won't necessarily go away.
Well, I mean, absent the sales tax, just talking about in general, you're concerned about what people think. The levy can be reauthorized to the people. You agree with that?
Yes, of course.
You agree the fee can be reauthorized by the city council?
Anytime they want. Yes, sir.
So
even after this passes.
It won't necessarily go away.
That's a really good point. Thank you, Your Honor. When they say you're voting to get rid of this, they can impose the jail tax the very next day after it passes. They didn't ask us our opinion in the first place. So why are they saying this is a choice you get to make? It's like asking me if I want to change the weather. No.
Both you and Mr. Graham were asking that the ballot plan be amended to have the word, or to clarify that both the levy is going to expire at some point and the jail fee is going to expire, correct?
Yes, sir. And those were...
Okay. I felt I had to agree. I didn't want to, because that was not our argument. That was his argument. That was the argument of the Chamber of Commerce. But I couldn't stab the guy in the back. He's sitting right next to me, okay? We're supposed to be on the same side. He says, you were making this argument too, weren't you, Mr. Matthews? Yes. Well, actually, no. But, okay, you know, it's a lost cause anyway. I thought, okay, yeah, we're saying that too. He's trying to suck me into the argument that he wants to make. Why is the judge making the argument? He's not the lawyer for the other side. Well, yes, he is, actually. And so he's trying to get me into this permanent discussion. I'm not going there, buddy. I'm not going there. Go ahead.
The point I was going to make is forget about the sales tax.
Mm-hmm.
That wouldn't necessarily be true, because they will expire, but they can't be reauthorized either by the people or by the city council, correct?
Well, by that logic, sir, with respect, every law that we pass should not include the word permanent anywhere in it, because nothing in this life is permanent.
I agree with you, Mr. Matthews.
They do it anyway because they're trying to influence the vote.
Well, you're asking that the sales tax be referred to as permanent. It is a permanent, is it? If enacted.
I guess it depends on your definition of the word permanent. Nothing in life is permanent.
Well, my definition from the dictionary is unending. So a sales tax is not unending.
And as I said, sir, with respect, that's what they tell us we'll get from a permanent tax on property that will permanently solve the funding for the sheriff.
So you're talking about policy as opposed to the ballot fighter.
No, I'm talking about.
That's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. Now, I cannot come back and say again to him, look, this is just your stupid definition. I'm not going to do that. Okay.
Yeah.
So instead, I said, he kept trying these various combinations to get me into that little box. I wasn't going into that little box. I tried to get a cat into a box. That cat's not going in that box. Okay. And so what I said was, well, that's what they say. That's what they say. That's what their definition of it. They're saying this is going to permanently solve stuff. Every time he tries a new tactic to get me in that box, I use a new tactic to turn the box on its side. We need to think outside the box, Mike.
Ah, yes. Well, and that's right. Yes. And had you been put in the box, that's the end of that.
This is a boxing match.
By definition, yes, a boxing match. Okay.
Psychology, sir.
My obligation is to authorize a fair ballot title.
Well, you'll know.
I'm just wondering if it's fair and clear to say it's permanent sales tax when it can be.
Seems obvious that I'm not going to win that argument, which also wasn't the argument that we put up.
Mike,
put up is that this.
Okay. So seems obvious I'm not going to win that argument. And tomorrow I'm going to say something like, this is your court, you get to decide, what these things mean. But what I tried to do with that was it seems obvious I'm not going to win that argument. And this is now part of the law too. That wasn't the argument that we put up. Remember, I'm speaking now, right. Not this guy Graham and not the other side.
Right. And you're already 7 minutes. You're already 7 minutes into your time and you're still talking about the other guy's argument.
That's right. The other guy being the judge, as a matter of fact. So
yes.
I use something solid from the law. Look, I know enough about this. I watch TV. Solid in the law, which was if the judge continued saying that, I was trying to stop him from trying to trap me, then he would be arguing something that I didn't put up as an argument, that we didn't put up as an argument. Ours was about the 3 items in one, and there's solid law for that too. So I'm trying to get him to stop by saying, but that wasn't our argument. Now, the judge really, he could, but he shouldn't. He's not Keith Heck. He should not come back and then say, well, I'm still going to argue that he really can't under the law, because then that's getting me to talk about something which wasn't part of our argument in the first place. That's why I did that.
Violates the single issue point. That's why we didn't put that in there, because we kind of thought this might happen. Look, it's not necessary to put in the thing about the jail utility fee because it's going to sunset anyway. And the city council could put it back on the next day. So any vote that anybody has and where they think that they're influencing that weather pattern, It's false. Second thing is,
Look at Bartholomew.
They
He
run
didn't
out of
write
room to
that.
put any additional words, permanent or any other thing, temporary. Well, that would give them the room. They could put in all kinds of things. See, in this case, they're saying, do you like kittens? Do you like sunshine? Oh, and also here's a tax.
Yeah.
All right. Kittens and sunshine. Where'd that come from?
Yes, I've heard that somewhere before.
Well, okay. So what happens next is then I say a little blathery stuff, and then it goes over to Mark Bartholomew, and then he says a lot more blathery stuff, and then the judge puts it back to Graham and me, and we get to end up with blather, and then the judge says, you know, that's it, get out of my courtroom, and then I go up there and slap him around a little bit. So you'll have to.
Yes, right. So tune in tomorrow night.
We know how to get you to watch.
It's like an episode of Batman or something.
Oh yeah,
we needed the pow biff.
right. Well, look, as I said, and I'm not making this up, early on, obviously, when I looked over at the camera and Mike, I don't know how he kept from laughing. That was it. Okay, so what you do is you just get in your best punches toward the end of it, and you try to say the things that need to be said, because everything past that point, here's what Graham forgot. Everything past that point is just for the record, just for the camera, just for the audience. That's all. Now it's a court of public opinion, and they're going to look at the judge and say, that wasn't right. And they're going to listen to Graham. He shouldn't have insulted us. And then you listen to Bartholomew, who almost doesn't really have to say anything. He will put up some good case law. That's nice. I kind of thought that Graham would do that. But ours was based specifically on court cases and the way these things are supposed to be designed, the way it's supposed to go. But it was, in this particular case, justice from a Josephine County courtroom. I said it before I went in, so it's not like I'm trying to make up for it or anything. Mike, what's your overall view of what you've seen so far, if you don't mind kind of summing this up, sir?
Well, you know, from what I'm seeing here now, I mean, it's clearly, you know, I mean, it's entertaining to watch the thrust and parry and all that kind of stuff, but it doesn't really mean anything, because as we have said in the beginning, as soon as the judge says, well, you know, is anything permanent in this life? You know, you're done at that point. There's nothing you can do. He's already made up his mind. He has, you know, in terms of that word permanent, you're not going to do anything to change that verbiage. And so that part of it's done. Now the only thing left to decide is whether or not the single issue rule applies to this particular ballot title.
That's right. And so what Bartholomew does when he comes back is he does a very good job of indicating by case law and personal experience or something that these things are totally related, and the fact that two of the things are going to expire, and the fact that one of them is going to expire before it even gets into law, and the fact that these things were put in here as a way to kind of, you know, make you think you're getting a good deal when you're not voting on anything. Not really, because they can put them right back on the ballot. That's really important to tell your neighbors. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, because it all goes right back on the ballot. It can go right back, not on the ballot, right back into law this next day, or they could take it off now. If they could take it off now, why are they putting us on the ballot? Mark Bartholomew said this. Just one second. However, it would be politically difficult to do so. Really?
Yeah. And listen, the reasoning behind this is that they, it's a false choice, and they know that, but they want to offer this to you because they want you to think, hey, if I vote for this, they're going to take that property tax off of me, and I'm going to end up saving money here.
But what difference does it make if Mark Bartholomew, as you'll see him say tomorrow, they can put it right back on there?
Yeah.
You're not voting on anything. You're voting, I would like better weather from now on. It means nothing, absolutely nothing, because there's no guarantees and there sure is no permanence.
Well, I suspect what'll happen if indeed they well, this thing is going to be on the ballot. That's a given.
Oh, yeah.
So if the voters of Grants Pass vote for this, then what's going to happen is as soon as that levy expires off of there, or if they take that levy off before it expires, they will then float another levy. As soon as this one would have expired, they will come up with another one saying that they need even more money.
Ken Hannum voted against this. Ken Hannum and Lily Morgan voted against it. They were the only two counselors who did. Even Ken Hannum said, we're going to run out of money if we cancel this levy. So you can see the handwriting on the wall. This is coming back. You think that you're saying goodbye to it, and you're not saying goodbye. So why did they put it on there? Everybody in our audience knows why. Go ahead,
because they want both. They ultimately want to have both. This is all about having more money at the city level. There, they want more money, and they're not getting it from the county property tax levy. So they're looking toward a sales tax, and then they'll bring the levy back later. Because listen, if there's one thing that we have learned from the recurring levies, is that the county votes it down every time. But there's also something else that we've learned from these levies, is that the city votes for it every time. And they also vote for their own public safety levies for the city as well. So,
okay, this is a very important point you're bringing up, because there was a discussion earlier by the city councilors, and we played it back for you, where one of them says we're spending our political capital. And one of the reasons why the city people vote for it is they trust their city councilors. What is this going to do to the trust that they have in their city councilors?
Well, one could only hope, that that the voters aren't as dumb as your colleague lawyer thinks they are, and that ultimately they will see deception when it's placed before them.
Now, there's only one way that people can find out. Okay, we've started the ball rolling. We were there in court. He was taping with 2 cameras. I was doing the speaking. We're playing this back for you, which you don't see anyplace else. Have you seen any clips at all from this? No, because there was nobody there, okay, except for us. Now it falls into your lap. Oh, no, not that again. I hate that, Dale. Shut up. Okay, so you need to talk with
Dale has contempt for you people. Just told you to shut up. You
need to talk with your neighbor. Maybe you already think you know what your neighbor is going to do. Yeah, we've seen that a lot, where people say, I'm not going to vote for that, and then they vote for it, or the other way around. Okay, so talk with your neighbor. Just tell him what you've heard. Don't tell him what I've said. Sure as heck, don't tell him what Mike said, but tell him what you've heard here. Okay, and what you're going to hear tomorrow night. This is why we're playing all this for you. It's not because of the big bucks, I can tell you, and why we were there, and why we made this argument to try to stand up a bit for you. Look, I've always said it's not so much the decisions that are made, because you're the voters, you get to decide. Is the process fair? And in this case, we got solid law behind us saying that if you have a false choice, that's not the right thing to do. And with another kind of judge, another category of judge, the judge would have said, you shouldn't have put that thing on there if it's going to expire before this passes. Yeah. This is basic.
Yeah, it's deception.